One question I wanted to kick around, and it's something I was talking about Kristen about. Does Storgy trump Philia, or does Philia trump Storgy?
Which one's Storgy and which one's Philia?
Storgy is a family affection, and Philia is friendship. Oh, boy. Looks like you need to go on my eBay page and buy yourself a first edition, American first edition of the Four Loves.
I just wanted to see David's face.
Okay. All right. Are we recording on Audacity?
Well, no, we're just recording and we've already started.
Okay, great.
Well, it's good to be back in the common room, gentlemen.
It is. It's very nice.
Cheers. What are you all drinking?
Cheers.
I finally opened this box that I bought at the same time as I bought all of your stuff in Oxford.
Yeah.
I kept these for myself, which I think are going to be the good ones. And so I'm very excited to taste them.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm drinking British tea, Harney and Sons, hot cinnamon spice. But my sister-in-law, who's the queen of the extravagant gift, saw this beautiful picture of a beaver with an expression and had engraved Mr. Beaver's Brewery. So she gave me a couple of pint glasses.
That's so good.
Well, cheers to you, gentlemen. Happy Boxing Day. Happy Christmas. Second day of Christmas. And hope that you're blessed and well.
Cheers.
Cheers, gentlemen.
I'm drinking some Glenmorangie. I decided that we're not recording an episode, so I'm going to leave Matt's brown paper bag of terror to the next episode and enjoy one that I know I'm going to like.
Yeah, lovely.
You know, I did keep the best for myself because, man, this is tasty.
That's good. I'm so glad. Well, listeners,
I'm going to use that as a point of discussion when we talk about agape.
Yes. There you go. I don't know if you can see David's wearing his festive Pints with Jack t-shirt. I got my second breakfast t-shirt. What about second breakfast? Which is
and
what
I
we had
am
today.
wearing nothing.
Lewis-related Christmas gifts, gentlemen?
Ooh.
I received something in the mail that, I just have to turn it just slightly.
Uh-huh.
Right there.
Okay.
That received from Sir Andrew Lazo.
Oh.
What a lovely! I had to put it. That's my Beyond Personality, maybe first edition or close to. Mm-hmm. That's my Four Loves one I got from you, Andrew. And then that's what you just sent me.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. I found a later printing first edition of Mere Christianity that I sent off to Matt. And what about you, David?
Well, my copy of The Horse and His Boy, which you sent me, is actually currently downstairs. But what I do have to hand is something that my wife got me.
Ooh. What does it say?
Yeah, I can't see what it says, but it looks beautiful.
It says, someday you will be old enough to read fairy tales again.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I littered my list with Lewisy things. I had another T-shirt. I guess I've got one from y'all that's on the way. But I also got Hal Poe's Volume 2. This is actually a picture owned by Steve Beebe. I've held the original in my hand. And it's got lovely illustrations. Right? Beautiful picture of Albert and Jack. So he doesn't mention Early Prose Joy or my name in there, but he's talking about the conversion, so we'll leave that for another date.
How dare he?
Oh, it's just all part of the big fight. But then, David, I think you posted about these, and so I was given this one. Sorry about the reflection. It says, next to the Blessed Sacrament itself, your neighbor is the holiest object presented to your senses. And there's a little lion coming up from the pipe smoke. So, yeah. So I can't wait to get home and get this framed. And then behind me, my wife gave me the Sinai crucifix.
Nice.
So I've got another icon from Legacy Icons. So,
well, I want to kick it off with the first question because it's going to flow beautifully from what you just showed us. I've had different seasons in my life, speaking of the Blessed Sacrament, where I've felt a lot more faithful, fruitful, even emotional devotion to it, and other times more stale and not appreciated what it is. And Lewis, right there, next to the Blessed Sacrament, our neighbor. So he held the Blessed Sacrament in very, very, very high regard, really in like the highest regard. I'm curious from your guys' perspective, what are the things in your life that have allowed you to be able to hold it at such a high reverence? And that could be both big picture, some of the things early on that really changed your view of it, and more on the day-to-day or the week-to-week, the fluctuations, because we know we sometimes have periods where it feels like we're going through the motions, but we're being obedient. And then there's periods where we're really, we're on our knees and we're almost in tears as we're receiving what a gift this is. And so I'm kind of curious your guys' thoughts as someone who's gone through both periods where I've cried beforehand and I've just barely showed up and taken it completely for granted.
Oh, that's great. What about you, David?
I can think of two things there. One on the purely intellectual side. It was when I first read the letters of St. Ignatius of Antioch, who was a bishop in Antioch, successor to Peter. So we're talking end of the 1st century, start of the 2nd, when he's being taken in chains to Rome to be thrown to wild beasts. And he wrote so beautifully about the Eucharist. That just shocked me when he speaks of it as this gift of God. And he was fighting with the Docetists, so people that claimed that Jesus didn't have a body, that he was just this spirit. And he says that these groups, they stay away from our Eucharist because they don't confess that this is the flesh of Christ, which was nailed to the cross and which the Father in his goodness raised. And it is one description in particular that really got to me when he described the Eucharist as the medicine of immortality.
Ooh,
it doesn't really get higher than that. So that really got my attention. But in terms of sort of more regular devotion, when people are going to do a holy hour and they haven't done it before, I'll offer some suggestions. So if they're going to spend an hour in front of the Blessed Sacrament, I'll say maybe try this, maybe try this, maybe try this. But speaking for myself personally, I grew up in a household where we would very often all be in the living room together around the fire, and everybody would be reading. And we were spending time together even though we weren't talking to each other. And that's my preference for a holy hour, to sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament and read a book.
That's wonderful. Lewis, I think, says that prayer is whatever you think about in a state of prayer or in a mindset of prayer. And I'm hacking that. I think it may come from Screwtape, but it might be from somewhere else.
Maybe Letters to Malcolm?
Maybe Letters to Malcolm, yeah. Yeah, likely so. I throw all these misattributed quotes out, and then David spends the rest of the week tracking them down for me. Oh, that was
Welcome
Emerson,
to my
not
life.
Chesterton.
Well, it's as I'm doing the show notes and I'm listening to the episode, I'll go and have a little look and see if I can find the exact quotation. And sometimes it's gone, it's not in that book. It must be somewhere else.
Well, I think Lewis did the same sorts of things. I know Anglican theology and Catholic theology differs some, but my liturgics professor said, in terms of healing ministry, in terms of your life as a priest, the most healing thing that you can do is present the liturgy week in and week out. And I don't even mind, like you said, Matt, I don't even mind if I'm not in the mood or not feeling particularly reverent, because Lewis says that the body needs to pray too. And just the act of receiving, even in ignorance, even in dullness, is in some ways condemnation on my mood. I'm not the Pauline sense of they eat condemnation unto themselves, but just a reminder that I need to come back in season and out of season. And so I love the sacrament. We don't have adoration in our church the way that you all do, but it's the highlight of our Mass, and I love that. I got a chance. My theology professor, the marvelous Kate Sonderegger, fantastic theologian, and she was isolated because of COVID, and wasn't able to take the sacrament. And we weren't distributing sacrament up in Alexandria, but I went down to Florida and I was able to be a Eucharistic visitor, and brought sacrament back, and was able to give to Kate Sonderegger, the host, just to go over to her house in the snow. And she hadn't had the Holy Meal. And I made her some soup, and I gave her some soup, and then I gave her the holy sacrament. And this is a woman far holier than I, and a priest. I mean, she could have consecrated herself, but to be able to offer and to see her receive it like this 8-year-old child full of wonder was just a fantastic thing. And Lewis, I think, keeps driving me towards the meeting of the heavenly and the earthly things, and that's why I keep coming back to him.
Yeah, for me, it was there's different parts, but like the bigger picture was similar to David's. The intellectual understanding of it was really profound, in that for me started with the early church fathers. And then I remember I heard this priest give this talk on it. There's actually 2 talks on it. One was Father Mike Schmitz, but I would come to that one second. This other one, I can't remember his name, but it was Catholic Lighthouse Media CD that I had gotten from a friend. And the priest talked about just a very classic example, but he goes, if God were to offer you $1 billion every day to receive the Eucharist, to come to Mass daily, would you do it? And everyone would. And he goes, there's more grace in that sacrament to make you a saint if you are open to receiving it, in offering infinitely more than $1 billion a day. And yet we don't understand what we skip when we just choose not to receive it. And I remember hearing that, and it brought tears to my eyes. And he combined it with this whole beautiful talk that ended up with JP2 as well. And so those were the big macro things, I guess, that changed my heart to it. But then that doesn't mean I haven't gone through long seasons where I have either been in the state of really open to it and going daily and just finding the joy that it's bringing to my life and the graces, and seasons where on a weekly basis I'm making ones throughout the week, and I'm struggling to pull myself there, and I'm feeling nothing when I go. And the other days it's Mass starts at 5:15 here, and it'll be 5 o'clock. I'll be like, I'd just rather stay in and just ignore what a gift that this could be to me. And I guess the thing that I have learned, and I'm working on it right now, which is a total another conversation probably for another common room, is how much what's going on in your overall life, your daily practices, your habits for holiness outside of that affect your ability to be present and experience beauty and joy in all of the daily things in life. Obviously, this being one specific example of it, but you can do it with anything. I mean, if you're living a life that is very devoid of true joys, you're going to, even when you are around a true joy, you're not going to be able to receive it or experience it. And so I've been actually keeping this journal over the last month and really taking it to heart of like this. I want to create a program. I was talking to a friend about this, something along the lines of like 30 days to thrive, combining everything I have learned from psychologically, spiritual principles, practices. So Screw Tape Letters, Habits for Holiness, Atomic Habits, a secular book, a bunch of books I've read on dopamine, all of these, and like combining it into this program that someone can go through to really help almost reset their life to be able to experience beauty and joy. And there's things like it, like Exodus 90, and I think they do an incredible job, and I've done it and I highly encourage it. But I think a lot of these just take one specific area. It's like Atomic Habits is just purely based on the secular side of things. And Exodus 90, I think, combines a couple things, but could be done even better. So anyways, it's something I'm thinking about, and I've wondered if like in 2022, doing it under the umbrella of Pints with Jack, because it would fit really perfect with like the Screw Tape Letters and some idea there, and using those as a daily devotion as you're going through with these principles and stuff. So anyways, that was a long way of saying it's something that's just been in the last like couple weeks on my heart. And I'm noticing as I built my own like habit journal thingy that I check every single day. And it's amazing how even today at Mass, I really enjoyed it. I found more beauty and joy in it. And so I think there's, as Father Mark Berry says, it's sometimes not sincerity, or lack of sincerity, but a lack of strategy. And sometimes the building of the strategy is enough to keep people from developing it.
Actions become habits, and habits become virtues. I want to encourage our viewers who may be not as liturgical. We're pretty much on the liturgical end of things, and some folks have communion once a month or once every quarter. And part of the reason I decided to become a priest was when I would have visitors in my classroom, I would stop and I would offer them a cup of coffee or cup of tea and give that to them in Jesus' name, because he said, when you give a cup of cold water in Jesus' name, so it can be incarnational. You can make Jesus present by giving food or drink. And then also he said, whenever you drink it, and I know that applies to the cup, to the grail, but in some ways, I wonder if there isn't some kind of transpositional sense of any act of eating and drinking can become Eucharistic, knowing that God gives us food so that we can have life. And so even before I was liturgical, this sense of the Eucharistic nature of eating and drinking, that the incarnation means that physical things are important and good, and that Christ can be present. If you never go to an Episcopal church or a Catholic church, if you never make communion except for a few times a year, nevertheless, the intentionality of that communion and the fact that any meal remembers him, I think that can be a truth that's worth carrying away, especially during this season when we do so much eating and drinking.
And the idea that you're expressing there is one I think that Lewis read in MacDonald. I think it's in his anthology. He says, MacDonald says something to the effect of, the goal is for every meal to be a Eucharist. Mm-hmm. And he was far lower church than I think any of us. But I love that idea that we go to the Eucharist to make more things Eucharistic. And when you mentioned about that this is based in eating and drinking, I actually spent yesterday, as I was tidying up the house after Christmas, I was listening to the rest of the Four Loves. And in a later chapter, Lewis is going to talk about a natural sacrament of eros, and the idea that grace builds on nature. And so it builds both on the marital embrace, but then also every meal and every drink.
Well, and it's the last thing I'll say on this, but what you just said, David, connects to an article I read a couple years ago, and I have kept a folder with notes on this topic too, but this is years down the road, if ever. But a book on the sacramental life, and how the sacraments are so profound and powerful, but the gift of the sacrament, the incarnate, the divine and the temporal coming together, is not just exclusive to the sacrament. It's meant to be a way of life that goes beyond that. And I think you just said it really beautifully there, David, and what you were saying earlier, Andrew, of every meal can somewhat be sacramental. There might be some more focused sacraments, but that doesn't mean that's the only way that the incarnation is like manifesting itself. And so
the higher doesn't stand without the lower. And Lewis always chucks us under the chin. That's always so much more. I mean, it's in the sonnet that I wrote that Malcolm Guite recorded for me, and maybe we can throw in a link. And the last stanza says, I bless you that each meal remembers you. Each cup can offer healing in your name. Your body and your blood unmake all shame. Your empty grave alone makes all things new. And yes, the flood of holiness, because the Word, the second person of the Trinity, chose to agree to the incarnation. John Fisher, the old singer-songwriter, editor at Christianity Today, said, I have seen the Son of Man in the human caravan. The fact that Christ, that the second person of the Trinity became flesh for us, was begotten for us, validates our fleshly existence. And I think that's part of why I love Four Loves so much, is because friendship is also similarly incarnational. In friendship, you see the love of God expressed, and the deeper your friendships are, the more they know you, the more they know your foibles, and the more they love you anyway, right? So the pleasure of your friends and the grace to put up with your nonsense, to me, are these kind of almost Eucharistic or incarnational echoes of the way that God loves us and puts up with our nonsense as well.
Well, gentlemen, I'm glad you guys David. Put up with my nonsenses every single week. We know we're all thinking about one person here.
Oh, we should. I know we're doing our interviews about Storgy, but we should probably get our most significant friends or partners to get to do a common room and talk about our idiocies. I would love to hear David or Marie and Kristen and some of Matt's friends, talk about what idiots they are and how great they are to continue loving us in spite of that.
Well, Lewis himself says nobody finds themselves more ridiculous than lovers.
Yes.
I will have Marie on at the end of the Eros chapter, and
Okay.
I will give her an open mic to speak about all of my quirks and the veritable joyful roller coaster it is living with me.
Yes.
Well, when I did for this recent one, I did one of my closest friends, and you could have been for the friendship chapter. I chose him for the affection chapter, and I sort of gave him open game to like roast me, but then at the end he goes, "Man, I feel bad. I got this a little bit deeper and a little bit less lighthearted, and I think you're looking for the lighthearted." And I told him afterwards, I said, "Oh man, you like practically rewrote or restated the chapter of affection and friendship. He did such a good job about how our friendship has essentially followed what Lewis writes, and he didn't know this. And so as he's stating and going deep into our relationship, he's practically restating everything Lewis writes in friendship and affection." I was like, that worked as well. But I was kind of hoping he would go into some of those things that no one ever, what are the idiosyncrasies of Matt? What are the things where he's always like, "Shut up, Bush." Those kind of moments. But I wasn't able to tease any of those out of him.
Well, and I think this book really beautifully combines the way that the loves come together. And I think it couldn't have happened for Lewis unless Joy Davidman had come along and been friends and lovers and family, and then the recipient of his grace, and probably showed Lewis a great deal of grace. He was a tough nut to crack, and I think that the loves delight to come together. So I love that you chose a friend for the affection chapter. I chose my wife. She's going to talk about her family, and the last 5 years of being integrated into her family have shown me a lot about affection. So just great stuff there.
What's kind of sad, not to make this depressing at all, that was my aunt and uncle did this really cool gift for my grandparents on Christmas Eve. So we're recording this the 26th, so 2 days ago. And they took all of their VHSs in their basement without them knowing, and they digitalized them. And so they had this USB, and so we watched some videos. And I was looking back at some of our childhood videos. This was in 2000 at my grandparents for Christmas, and there's about 7 of the grandkids at this stage, and we're all ripping presents open, and it's just a mad rush. And I got a little bit of tears in my eyes. No one noticed, because I felt like I haven't felt that kind of fun affection in quite some time. And so I was like, oh man, that was like a good period. All this affection. But at the same time, my mind doesn't like dwell on that. It thinks through, what I would like to, how we have control over that in our own lives and somewhat creating that. Now, we obviously can't force affection on ourselves, but we can put ourselves in situations with loved ones, and we can give affection as well. And when we give it, it can sometimes create or give permission for others to give it back to us, because affection is a level of vulnerability. But anyways, it was really fun to look back at my little baby videos. And at that point, I would have been 9 years old.
I would also suggest that the law of undulation would apply here as well. That the levels of affection we receive vary over the course of our lives.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now I wake up, poke my head over the top of a bassinet, and somebody is tremendously excited to see me. Then he realizes I'm not mommy and isn't going to feed him. So he then screams in my face, and then I hand him to his mother, and then he's happy.
Yeah. My little almost 4-year-old niece, she's just becoming, this is going to be her kind of first Christmas. She's aware of everything. She's very sharp, but she came and asked me for a roll with lots of butter on it. She's been working on her L's, and I make her stick out her tongue. Lots of butter. "Uncle Andrew, can I have some bread with lots of butter?" And I said, "Sure." I said, "Do you know why I did this for you?" She said, "No." And I said, "Because I love you." And her whole face lit up. So all evening she would come up to me and say, "Uncle Andrew, can I have some bread with lots of butter on it?" And I said, "Sure." "And why am I going to give it to you?" "Because you love me." And she just so delighted at that. And so I just posted on my Instagram today, I made her first proper cup of tea. And so they get to share that with her. Yes, and I hotted the pot, and I put the milk in first so that it would scald at the right time. But to be able to share that and to see that kind of unadulterated affection in her eyes, I've got no other reason to love her except that we're related, and she's, marvelous. But what a joy. And that's what our Father is saying. Here's every good and perfect gift coming down from the Father of lights. Why did this good thing happen? Because I love you. And it's a reminder I need to hear every day too.
It's the kind of wonder that that's communicated to you when you read Chesterton's works. And I'm particularly thinking of Ethics of Elfland, because that was something I read relatively recently. But he sort of heads out into the world with the joyful glee of a 4 or 5-year-old. Everything is amazing. And, it might be in that chapter. It's definitely in that book where he says that the world isn't going to suffer lack of wonder, but it's the wonder that we experience when we come to things and experience them open-handed, rather than treating them as sort of blasé and everyday, and there's nothing special about autumn or winter or coming across a slug anymore.
Mm-hmm. The perfect example of that is when after getting back from my Europe trip, I thought to myself, I treated every single street as a new adventure, and every restaurant and every cafe. And then in there I would go in and I would just do it all on my own. I'm traveling on my own. And then I thought to myself, in the city that I'm living in, Grand Rapids, there's still a ton of stuff I've never experienced. But yet I take everything for granted, and I don't go out to eat or go to these places really on my own. And so I've changed that in the last 2 months. It's been the greatest thing ever. I just go to restaurants. I book myself a single solo reservation, and I'll just go and bring my Kindle, and I'll just experience these cool different places. And I'm like, you know what? Because this is a problem when you have married friends that now have kids. It becomes slightly tougher to just last minute do stuff, and I've now accepted that, and I just can't text because now all my closest friends here are married, and so I can't just be like, "What are you doing tonight, brother?" That doesn't quite happen so frequently. So I've had to adjust and adapt, and I'm really just enjoying taking it in. Just last week, I went to this symphony show called the Cirque de Noël. It was a beautiful Christmas show, and I did it last minute. It was 4 p.m. and the show started at 7. I said, there's some cheap nosebleed tickets on. I'll book one. And
I have a way of upgrading that experience, because what I did in the run-up to coming to the United States is, it's a very long story. Now is not the time or place, but basically I had started going outside of my comfort zone, and I noticed that whenever I did that, interesting things happened. Sometimes it was a disaster, but I at least had an interesting story. So I started trying to add more of that to my life, going out of my comfort zone more often. And so regularly when I went to either a bar or I went to a restaurant, I would have the waiter or the bartender order for me. It's like, whatever you like. And it was because of that I discovered that I like artichoke. I never thought I liked artichoke, but I gave that permission, and an artichoke dish came back. And I started eating it and was very excited to discover that it wasn't revolting.
But have you had the artichoke where you steam it and then you take the side actual leaves and you dip them in butter?
Yeah.
And then you eat? That was my childhood. We would only get that on my birthday, and it was the greatest thing ever.
Well, they're not that expensive, and they're not that hard to cook. And that too, I think, is like like the Christian life. We talk about in the hymn, the foretaste of glory divine. And at first, you just get a little bit of the artichoke, but you keep at it, and you keep braving the spines, and you keep laboring your way, and then you have that whole artichoke heart.
It's the best part.
It's that's going to be part, I think, of the banquet of at the marriage supper of the Lamb. So there'll be artichoke there for sure, and this adventure of trying new things, and some of that goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. I think that's reveling in the incarnational aspect of it. That our Lord came and ate food and had physical experiences, and I think that those can echo, and that's I think another great reminder of Christmas. And so we still have 10 more days of Christmas. Maybe we can I don't know if we're going to go get some Christmas pudding or anything, but just relishing the physicality of it, knowing that he blessed it by coming and gracing us with his physical presence on this world at this season.
Andrew, I think you know about Every Moment Holy, right? The book.
Oh yes. Oh, yes.
From
we
the
have
Rabbit Room.
both volumes. We have the large one and the small one, and the small one of volume 2 is coming out, and my wife already has that on pre-order. So yeah. Tell us, what's your experience with that?
I would just say that I think that really sums up that entire attitude, because it's effectively a book of blessings. Anyone that goes to a liturgical church, believe me, there will be a book of blessings somewhere in your church's tradition. And I love this one because it was one that was much more accessible to everybody, regardless of denomination. And it's really wonderful getting your first cup of coffee or tea in the morning and pulling open the book and offering the blessing, because it just reminds you of the goodness of God.
There's a blessing for the changing of a diaper, right?
I know.
And then the lithograph, the woodcut, right next to the blessing on the finishing of a good book is a picture of Lewis. And so there's some kindred souls. So, yes. Well, what a blessing to be with you all today, especially as we revel in the incarnation and the ways that we feast. And I'm grateful for the feast of this friendship that we have enjoyed together. So...
And I said I was going to ruthlessly enforce the time on this, and we are now at half an hour. So I think now is a good time to wrap up. Matt,
we didn't even get to any of the things that you guys wanted to talk about.
Well, we'll do another common room. So yes. Lewis tattoos and all the rest of them. So.
Listeners, in the comment section, let us know if you agree with David's ruthless 30-minute cutoff or not. I vote no.
Well, my wife's sandwich votes yes. So... yeah, I'll throw in the chat. There's the chat. I'll throw a link to, if you're interested in that blessing that I wrote. It was a Thanksgiving blessing that I wrote and Malcolm Geit recorded. So there's a link to that. But mostly we just wish you a very blessed Christmas. And we pray that your time with those who you love or your time alone will remind you of the presence of the incarnate Son in your lives.
Gentlemen, cheers. Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Cheers.